Mexico, land of enchantment, of spectacular red rocks and sweeping landscapes, of spacious skies and dramatic sunsets, is also the land of extreme drought, where the trees are dying, the forests are burning, and the lakes are disappearing. Everyone talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it. Or do they? You can do more than wish for rain.
Take the train again. Somewhere I might know I can't sleep again. Missing what I know, I miss the sound of rain falling on my street tonight. It's 5 a.m. again. I can't get no sleep. I miss the rain. I miss the rain. I miss the
New Mexico has enchanting beauty, red rock glory, high mountain vistas, meandering rivers. It's rich with history, unique architecture, outdoor activities, and special events known worldwide. The beauty of New Mexico is legendary, but there is something about New Mexico you won't find in the travel brochures.
Trees are dying. Oh, Mama, the trees are gone. Oh, Mama, the trees are crying. Oh, Mama, what have we done? Oh, Mama, the lakes are dying. Oh, Mama, the lakes are gone. Oh, Mama, the lakes are crying. Oh, Mama, what have we done?
how bad is New Mexico's drought? As of April 2015, New Mexico's reservoirs were at only 29% of capacity.
Well, it used to rain more, and the river would flood. Water would come up, 10 feet deep in there and be rushing down the river. That used to happen quite a few times in the summer. But I don't remember seeing that lately. And there was, at the time, a lot more rain. It used to rain more on us there.
So does it rain regularly in the summer now?
No. And they're all dead. And this one on the end is still alive in part.
In the old days when I was first here, everybody would count on the rain happening every day at 4 o'clock in the summer for July and August. And there would be a lot of thunder and a lot of heavy rain that was over in a little while. Sometimes it would be a totally clear day, and you knew just because it was July that the rain would come in the afternoon at 4. And that has totally changed.
The land is very dry in our community property. We are tilling the soil. We need to plant vegetables for our subsistence. We need rain in order to sustain our life. That's as far as being a community of brothers on top of Chama Canyon in the northern part of New Mexico. Because of less rain, we tend to produce less and less products, because the crops are our vegetables are dependent. The lives of the vegetables are dependent on the rain. If there is no rainfall, all these plants will dry up and will die. It's very sad.
On a dry Santa Fe River waterfall, a single flower struggles to survive, the grim reminder of life without water.
Let's stay here until tomorrow. I miss the sound of the rain. It's good to feel the summer showers, heaven's water on my face, heaven's water on my face. I'll leave my watch on the table. Don't want to know what time it is. I need to be near the ocean, heaven's water on my face, heaven's water on my face. Don't say you don't believe in what you cannot see. Don't tell me you don't believe
feel.
When I think of May and talking about May, I just go, ugh. May doesn't rank up there as one of my
What's
favorite.
April showers bring May flowers.
I know. May kind of reminds me of sort of like the onset of getting sick. You're running around like taking vitamin C.
You don't feel that good.
And zinc. The inevitable is coming, like the hot June.
Yeah.
June's like the apocalypse is on the way.
May and June are typically hard months for the drought-ridden southwestern states, including New Mexico, because these months are dry with plenty of wind, which dries out the land and the forests, leading to disastrous forest fires. Extreme weather is affecting the planet, and climate conditions are front-page news daily. An April 2014 report for the UN issued dire warnings with catastrophic consequences of inaction. A similar tone appeared in the report from climate scientists to the White House that same week. Climate news revealed that many areas of the Southwest are as dry or drier than during the Dust Bowl, including New Mexico. Records show that weather systems that bring rain to the western United States are becoming more rare, causing mega-drought conditions in New Mexico.
Water is not just another substance. It is a precious force that creates and gives life.
A profound water crisis is now confronting the Earth. Dramatic signs of the crisis have emerged within the United States. Furthermore, there is no place within the US where the evolving crisis is more evident than in the American Southwest.
Within the United States, the subtropical dry zone is expanding northward, and the effect of that expansion will be an increase in frequency and intensity of droughts in the southwest region. This could cause potential chaos in the 7 states which reside within the Colorado River watershed. The region is experiencing a steady decrease in mountain snowfall, lessening the deep accumulation of Rocky Mountain winter snow, which melts each spring and provides the Colorado River with its vital source of water.
A new NASA study predicts that by the end of the 21st century, the American Southwest and Great Plains are likely to experience longer and more severe droughts than at any other time in the last 1,000 years.
These droughts really represent events that nobody in the history of the United States has ever had to deal with. And so even in the modern era, droughts such as the ongoing droughts in California and the Southwest, these normal droughts act as major stresses on water resources in the region. So we expect that with these much longer droughts, it's going to be even more impactful and cause even more problems for agriculture and ecosystems in the region.
In the desert Southwest is an immense amount of tinder sitting on top of a drier landscape in a climate that's warmer at any time than in the past 1,000 years. Our forests are burning, and scientists are starting to believe that this is one of the first places where we're seeing tangible effects of these things, and to start to think about what does it mean for the rest of the planet.
Why did you choose to write about New Mexico for us?
17 years I've been living in Las Cruces, and I've spent a lot of time in the Black Range, west of Hillsboro and Truth or Consequences, where the Silver Fire burned 139,000 acres in 2013. And I was up in that forest before and after the fire, and I kind of watched the drought take over that forest over the course of several years. I've been thinking this forest is likely to burn sometime soon, and then it did.
And the Las Conchas fire.
Yeah, it's up near Los Alamos in northern New Mexico, and that was a very hot and fast fire. It burned 156,000 acres in 2011, and it was actually the second fire in that area. Much of the wilderness there near Bandelier, the Dome Wilderness, burned in 1996, and so one scientist I spoke with who works at Bandelier National Monument talked about what he called a 30,000 acre hole in what used to be a forest where there's literally not a coniferous tree, a pine tree anywhere in that 30,000 acres.
Science News in August 2015 focused on the health of forests in a changing world. It has been proven that forests combat climate change by pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Healthy forests provide energy, building materials, biodiversity, and food. The forests of the world have been responsible for creating an agreeable temperature for human survival on this planet. Trees absorb water, which is transported to the leaves and evaporates. Yes, trees perspire just like humans, and they perspire a lot. This evaporation is absorbed into the air and forms clouds, which helps contribute to rain. You'll notice that there's almost always clouds over a healthy forest. This is called the evapotranspiration effect. Trees hold down the soil and slow down the rate at which underground water goes downhill, thereby helping to reduce flooding. By increasing water infiltration, retention, and evaporation, as well as slowing the force of downhill water currents, forests help regulate the water cycle. Without forests, there are severe floods. Without forests, the oxygen we breathe becomes thin. Without forests, the bodies of water are decreased. When you take away the trees, the results are immediate. Cold nights and murderous hot days in deforested mountains have killed many people. It's not just the trees in the forests that are dying. Drive down any street in New Mexico, in any city, and see how many trees are dying. It's happening right in your very own neighborhood. It's happening in Santa Fe, in Albuquerque, and in every neighborhood in every city of New Mexico.
I bet that it's our fault.
Oh, Mama, what have we done?
The historical use of water in New Mexico included a system of communal irrigation ditches called acequias, also pronounced sequias. Made by human and oxen labor, the ditches were engineered to take advantage of gravity flow and therefore were often serpentine-shaped, much like natural rivers.
Those planks, you raise and lower to raise the water behind the gates so the water can get up and you can water your field. And when you're through, you lift the planks back up and the water goes freely.
The ditch manager, called a mayordomo, monitored the use of water for irrigation by each acequia member. Each member had a designated time of the week to use the water for his personal field.
Earlier, before I lived here, I lived up in Vallecitos, which is north of here in Rio Arriba County. It's past La Madera and El Rito. And we had a big river there, and we had a ditch system. And my then husband was the mayordomo of the ditch. And then he was always going off to Santa Fe to work, so I was the mayordomo.
You ditch them the land, We used it for irrigation. We had 2 acres of land. And we used to grow chili, tomatoes, watermelons, all kinds of vegetables, and half an acre of corn. And we used to water off the ditch.
Watered the cows, and everybody watered their hay fields with this water. And it was a very tricky business, but there seemed to be plenty of water.
If the ditch was damaged, the members gathered together to repair it. This was considered a sacred duty.
But in later years, when water was scarce, we had to get permission from the conservancy.
For the last 20 years, I think that there isn't really enough water.
Although many of the ditches have dried up or have less water than years ago, this Acequia model can be a guide for communal cooperation as we enter a time when climate change requires deep change in the way we live. Are there viable solutions to the consequences of long-term drought and the loss of the forests? Yes, luckily there are, and many of the solutions are proactive rather than idle. Craig Allen of the USGS at Bandelier National Monument in New Mexico argues that maintaining forest health in the context of a changing climate may require focusing on the forests themselves and on strategies to reduce their vulnerability to increasing water stress. Allen calls this watering the forests. Adopting water conservation for vegetation as a priority for managing water on forested lands would represent a fundamental change in perspective and potentially involve trade-offs with other downstream uses of water. It's controversial, yes, but considering the importance of trees to the survival of our species, this is a strategy that should be carefully considered.
Important that we stretch every little bit of rainfall as we can. Rainfall is ideal moisture here.
Rainwater harvesting in New Mexico is an essential part of using water effectively and providing for the health of gardens and landscapes. Rainwater has long been known to be healthier for plants than city water. Rooftop collection of rainwater into tanks is called active rainwater harvesting and is an essential component of the practice of permaculture. Not only do the plants benefit from rainwater harvesting, but it helps restore the water levels in aquifers if used on a large scale. In a low rainfall region such as New Mexico, rainwater harvesting should be an essential part of every household for the preservation of our natural water resources.
Rivers down there used to have cottonwoods, used to have water flowing all the time. But what happened was the city built up, they channelized all this water, sent it away. They sent it like back, most of the way that cities are built are modeled after what is needed back east, where they have too much water. So here, they were sending all the water away, not letting it get into the soil. It was not recharging the groundwater. The groundwater levels dropping. The river dried up, and now you only get water in it when you have a big rain, and it is instead of keeping it there. So all my buildings have water catchment, rainwater catchment, to go into cisterns. It's a portable solar pump. So once I've captured everything, all the rainwater, and put them in the cisterns, I can move this around to all the different cisterns and pump the water up here into the garden. If you follow this, you will get results. I've done this, and I swear by it. It really, really works.
And yes, you can store it, and this year we have actually managed to get through the winter with our rain barrels. But most people don't have 3,000 gallon rain barrels.
A 2,000 square foot roof used for rainwater harvesting can collect 1,200 gallons of rainwater for each 1 inch of rainfall. Even if we have only 10 inches of rainfall during the year, That means 12,000 gallons of water for use in landscapes and gardens. Rainwater harvesting is legal and encouraged in New Mexico. For more information, you can download a manual specifically written for New Mexico from this website. Rainwater harvesting has been called the most important single action that New Mexicans can do to help preserve our natural water resource. Permaculture is a system of sustainable agriculture that incorporates care of the earth along with care of the people in a system designed on fair share for everyone. The basic principles are to use renewable resources, produce no waste, and learn by observing and interacting with nature instead of trying to dominate it.
Of what permaculture is about. This is from Gaia's Garden. It's a wonderful book, if you ever get a chance, by Toby Hemingway. It's a small-scale permaculture for the home, I think, or something like that. Anyway, nothing in nature does one thing. Its multi-purposeness, wherein each interconnected piece plays many roles, is another quality that distinguishes an ecologically designed garden from others. This connection goes two ways. In nature, each piece not only plays many roles, each role is supported by many players.
The goal in permaculture is to have an almost perfectly closed system that sustains itself for decades. This system uses a mix of perennial plants that either nurture or aerate the soil, or nitrogen fix the soil, or drop leaves as mulch. Animals in this system contribute by scratching the soil or fertilizing. Rainwater harvesting is encouraged, but in this system, once established, the soil will store huge amounts of water and will lose very little to runoff.
And that's sort of my understanding of what permaculture is. It's not starting from scratch, it's having a permanent way of keeping the microbes alive and the moisture in the soil. In permaculture gardening, you have zones, and zone 1 is where the vegetables are, and they should be the closest to the kitchen. And my kitchen is here. So these beds are arranged for vegetables. This is the Work and Beauty demo garden, and it's really in its very initial stages. The idea is that it's going to be interlocking guilds, and guild growing is a permaculture concept, where you plant things around trees that bring nutrition to the soil, keep away insects, keep down moisture, and, harmonize with the tree.
Here's an example of a fruit tree guild, this one being an apple tree guild. Around the apple tree are planted bee attractors, such as hummingbird bush or salvia, human attractors, such as berries, mulching plants, such as comfrey, nitrogen fixers, such as beans, pest repellents, such as mint, and grass inhibitors, such as daffodils. Types of tree guilds will vary from region to region and can easily be found online or in permaculture resources.
Hi, my name is Scott Pittman with the Permaculture Institute. I'm standing here in a variety of plants, and I'd like to talk somewhat about how we began. How do we begin revegetating land? How do we start gathering seeds, gathering the plants that work best in our ecosystem, following as many principles of permaculture as we can, and trying to let nature guide us in our selection. So this is clary sage, a biennial plant that we have a lot of here. It's a great pollinator, and you can see inside these little cups are seed. These are the seed that come out of those little cups. They're very small, and it's much easier than trying to take the seeds and then spread them, to just clip off the whole seed head and put it aside, and then later we'll distribute them throughout the garden. So this is mullein. It too is valued for its seed. It's also a biennial plant. This one is not through blooming yet. We can still take it. There will be plenty of seeds in this stalk. And we collect these and spread them around. This is a great plant for bringing mineral up from deep in the soil, and through the decomposition of leaves and stalk, it replaces mineral in the rhizosphere of the surrounding plants.
Permaculture uses a system of swales, which are simply mounds of soil for directing water towards the plants that need it. Swales are particularly needed in arid climates. In addition to using swales, adding mulch protects the moisture in the soil.
Is you're creating catchments for that water so it doesn't just wash down. So when the rain comes, it comes and gets caught in this little ditch for nothing, better word for it. And you can have plants there or whatever, whatever you want. But basically the idea is the rain falls on your garden, you want to keep in your garden. Here are some more swales. So what it is whenever I get a big rain, I capture all the water that falls. It doesn't run down the road like it used to. It all just sits there and then soaks in. Now because I've been increasing the organic matter of the soil, it soaks in quickly. So even if I get a 3-inch rain, it's just going to go in there and keep that water in there all the time. All this is all heavily mulched.
Hoop houses can extend your growing season and help provide nutritional food all year round.
I've just finishing up the last of my spring vegetables. I've already harvested all the Chinese cabbage, the bok choy is gone. I still have collards to harvest. I have carrots going, and I'm going to plant my tomatoes in between all the carrots. I've harvested out of these hoop houses every month of the year. Certain things will do better. The Chinese cabbage I planted in the fall. So my hoop houses I actually bought as a kit from Conley greenhouses. Okay, so I buy them. It doesn't come with the wood and it doesn't come with the plastic, but it's pretty simple put together. I don't know if you can see in here, but it's a T-frame type construction. It's not the round tube.
Keyhole gardens are a permaculture design meant to increase the amount of space used for plants by decreasing the area for pathways. It's a beautiful concept of a raised bed garden and great for the person tending it because it is elevated. It conserves water and also has the potential of creating its own compost by a containment system in the center. We created a keyhole garden for an apartment complex in New Mexico this spring, and I'm going to take you step by step through how we did it. First, we measured the area and outlined it, then cleared it. Then there was the collecting of stone, lots of stone. We used all natural found materials from the surrounding area and did not buy materials. The rocks were layered upon each other, finding the right stones to fit in until we reached the level we wanted. We filled the keyhole with large rocks at the bottom for drainage, then layers of cardboard, sand, ash, and finally soil. Cynthia had made us really rich compost, which we used on top, and she filled the composting basket with layers of rock and compost. Cynthia took one of the large pieces of sandstone and with a Dremel tool carved Nijoni Keyhole 2015. The garden has been abundant, full of vegetables. People of the apartment complex have thoroughly enjoyed this creation. Soil is important to all of us. In Hebrew traditional language, The word Adama, or as we have shortened it, Adam, meant earth, the soil. Soil provides nutrients that sustain plants for food and anchors their roots. Soil purifies most of the water on earth and regulates excess rainfall and prevents floods. Taking care of the soil is an important duty, and not just if you're a farmer. The National Climate Assessment shows that in recent years, areas of the Southwest have been as dry or drier than during the Dust Bowl of the Great Depression.
And the Dust Bowl is happening today.
Dust storms with winds up to 50 miles an hour rage through the region, and fields that were once productive turn to dust. Ken Burns made a documentary on the Dust Bowl years, and narrator Peter Coyote stated in the film it was the worst man-made disaster in American history. The reason it was called man-made was because the Great Plains had been tilled by millions of acres in order to take advantage of high crop prices. But once those prices fell, the fields went unplanted, leaving open soil exposed.
One of the big things with that was that, with the Dust Bowl, was our settlers came in and they had the plow. And their first thing was to break up the sod. That was what the settlers did, was they tore up that root system. There's nothing like grass roots grow miles and miles deep, but grass roots grow probably as deep as anything. And we tore that up. Didn't have the roots in there, didn't have the microbes. And that's what's happened at Chinle today, here on the Navajo Reservation. They've got a Dust Bowl there.
During the Great Depression Dust Bowl, high winds gathered up the soil into black walls of dust as much as 10,000 feet high and 200 miles wide that rolled across the land. These black blizzards were terrifying and even extremely unhealthy. The soil conservation practices that went into effect were designed to save the soil, and it is these lessons that should be remembered today.
And that's what introduced our conservation practices. But again, at that time, we weren't thinking about microbes.
Ann Malloy and a growing number of soil scientists are on the forefront of learning more about the microbes in the soil. They know that soil is alive. Microbes are the microorganisms that break down organic material into forms that plant roots can absorb for their growth. So instead of feeding the plants, permaculture experts will tell you to feed the soil or feed the microbes. The way to feed the microbes is through the addition of organic material.
But they did, realize that we needed plants, the roots in the soil. But we didn't realize that one of the big things for those roots was it was food and a place to live for the microbes so that they could do their job. And so what we've got to do now to prevent that is we want to put plants, living plants, on that bare ground to get it back to what it was before the settlers came.
Much of the soil in the Southwest is now malnourished, which leads to Dust Bowl conditions. Unsustainable agricultural practices are the chief cause of the problems with the soil, including the use of artificial fertilizers that kill the living organisms in the soil. Unfortunately, soil around the world is now a threatened natural resource.
We've got to put life back into the soil.
I don't think people really realize the seriousness of this anywhere on the planet.
We need to now start thinking about how to keep that life in the soil, because that life in the soil is what grows our plants. It's what cleans up our air. It's what cleans up our water.
Composting and permaculture practices will feed the soil. When we feed the soil, in return, the soil feeds us.
The other way to think about permaculture is as a way to change the world, because of course a lot of people are motivated around permaculture as a positive, we can change the world in a positive way, rather than just endlessly trying to stop the world we don't want. Permaculture has always been about how do we create the world we do want. Well, when you start to think about those issues, most people think about how we change public policies, how you get the leverages of power pulled in a different way, so all the big structures in society get changed. That's an old way of changing the world. The sort of new way that's now sort of well proven, but still a lot of the politicos, the people who think about how do we change the world, haven't caught on that actually by changing yourself and what you do yourself, that is actually not just a little stepping stone to contributing to a larger change, it's actually arguably the most powerful thing you can do. And some of the reasons why, firstly, if you've got a strategy or anything in permaculture, from owner building to community supported agriculture, right back to just growing your own food in your backyard, when you do something for yourself that you benefit from, that reflects the ethics and design principles of permaculture, you're doing something for yourself and you're also reducing your adverse impact on the world. But by doing something that you benefit from, that is potentially attractive to other people to say, oh, I'll do that too. Whereas the hard-bitten person who's doing something just to atone for our sins in the world is not very attractive to many other people. You know, a small proportion are motivated by such things, but most people want to get something out of it, and especially get something directly. So the permaculture strategies benefit the early adopters, and on top of that, they're simple, low-key things that other people can copy. And they often don't need permission of the authorities, of the banks to provide funding to do it. And that's really important, because a lot of these changes, if they were done at even by a proportion of the population, represent a real threat to a lot of the power structures in society. A lot of those centralised systems, the corporations, the governments with their tax base. So they would understand that a lot of this self-reliant stuff associated with permaculture is actually subversive. And so if it really took off in a large way, it might be not just not assisted, but attempts to prevent it. If that's like some advanced technology or very large scale project, it's very easy for power elites to say, no, can't do that. And we can see the struggles over renewable energy versus fossil fuels. But if it's something that you can do at home, it's very, very hard to stop it. So on top of that, that copying allows a rapid evolution where you improve the thing, because you do one example and then you copy it and do another, and you get this incremental improvement. If we did big projects that are all driven by sustainability concepts but represent massive reallocation of society's resources, it always will end up as a mess. Because somehow the complexity of those things, you might have the ideas, but when you actually go to do it, it's never quite right. So the small scale replication, rather than big giant projects, is a good learning process. And it also allows people to adapt the solutions to different situations. And that's very, very important because every situation is slightly different. And then when you get more people doing it, that gives you, if you like, the lobbying power of, well, there's all of us over here doing this. We've got a bit of a power base through autonomy, not a power base through shouting louder to get the authorities to change policies, because that's really a powerless way to go about things. And we can see in the last 30 years how mass movements to get structures to change direction, whether it's due to engaging in foreign wars or whether it's to do with climate change, have actually been harder and harder to get those changes and requiring more and more mass movement resources. Whereas when we just do something that supports ourselves and provides an example to others, it's actually also the leverage towards a larger positive change.
The sky is full of lightning. Smell the rain in the air. The memories come rushing back. The feelings are fading fast. The sky is full of lightning. Don't close your eyes, and don't waste your time, or you might miss your piece of heaven. Is this my piece, little piece of heaven?
Rainwater harvesting and permaculture are physical ways in which we can remediate drought, and there are also non-physical ways to help. The title of this film, Wishing for Rain, was inspired by Dr. Roger Nelson's 1997 paper in the Journal of Scientific Exploration entitled Wishing for Good Weather, a Natural Experiment in Group Consciousness. Nelson studied the group consciousness and weather as it concerned Princeton commencements, which they always seemed to have dry, sunny weather greater than would be statistically expected.
Princeton University, where I worked for many years, there is a 4-day celebration, much of which is outdoors. When I first came to Princeton, I was told that I should check that out. And when I did, I heard people saying, you see, once again, we have beautiful weather for the fever heating. Princeton has a government weather station, so I decided I would see whether there was any substance to this notion that it's always good weather for Princeton fever heating. I downloaded data from the government, and for several days before and after Princeton, and then I analyzed the data, asking the question, how much rain is there, how often does it rain, and how much is there? And it turns out that on the 3 days where the ceremonies are all outdoors and really profit from having good weather, but the evidence is at least consonant with the idea that the wishes and desires, mostly unconscious, but occasionally even expressed, of 10,000 or 15,000 people in Princeton hoping for good weather, those wishes actually subtly influence what happens. What we have in our minds, whether it's unconscious or conscious, that it has to do with interconnecting with other people, does have a presence in the world.
The prediction we made and confirmed ultimately was that group consciousness, even though people didn't know the instrument was even there, no intention involved, that group consciousness coherence could change the way the machine produced its data. And that in turn led to some questions about what if you have two or several of these devices? And what if they're far from the so-called event? And so we spread a bunch of them around the world in what's now called the Global Consciousness Project. It was first called the EGG Project because it was a little bit of an analog to something like an EEG net, but for the globe. So we put random number generators as much as we could all around the world and gathered the data and asked a similar kind of question. What happens if there's a really big event that brings tremendous numbers of people into the same frame of mind, into a kind of coherent state of consciousness? And what happens is that, again, the data change from random. They have a very small, low-level structure, which requires statistical analysis to see, but it's a change that should not happen to true random number generators. And so we don't know the reason why these things happen, but we see a correlation between the big events that cause shared emotion and the changes in the data. So we wind up essentially having to conclude that there is something like a mass consciousness.
Weather is strongly influenced by Earth frequencies, called Schumann resonances.
I have something to tell you. Something incredible. Something you're going to find hard to believe. You have a connection to this planet. A very real connection. A connection in the form of a frequency. And you've had it your whole life.
Here is a representation of what the Schumann resonance sounds like. Mass consciousness is a field of very strong energy waves affecting the globe. The weather is getting crazy, as if nature is losing its mind. Or is it rather that we, the people, are getting off track? If our energy patterns are chaotic, such as acts of violence, then it follows that weather patterns would result in tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes. If large groups of people are depressed or selfish, it follows that weather patterns could result in drought, wind, floods.
I'm Navajo, Indian, Native American Indian.
Is there a connection between human beings and rain?
For me personally, yes. I grew up with that wonderful sense of the spirit of rain and the human spirit. They are forces created for each other by the Creator Himself. And I do totally believe it was in the beginning when we were youngsters that my grandmother and my grandfather instilled in us the power of rain, the goodness of rain.
Grandmother taught that there were 4 time periods on earth for people. And the 4th period has to do with fire. I think our modern ways are affecting Father Sky. I think this is why we're not having rain and we're in the 4th period, having to do with fire. Just look around the globe. Fires everywhere, in Washington and in Oregon, in Canada and in Siberia. Maybe our large forest fires are telling us something.
James Gustav Speth, former head of the Council on Environmental Quality and a top Washington policymaker, who is called the Dean of the Environmental Movement, commented, "I used to think the top environmental problems facing the world were global warming, environmental degradation, and ecosystem collapse. But I was wrong. The real problem is not those three items, but greed, selfishness, and apathy. And for that, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation."
Chief Seattle said in 1854, "Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect."
Pope Francis, in his second encyclical of May 2015, recognized the connection between the earth and people when he stated, "Nature cannot be regarded as something separate from ourselves or as a mere setting in which we live. We are part of nature, included in it, and thus in constant interaction with it."
Humankind must be a steward of the earth, caretakers for all that dwells on it. So be one heart with all things.
So it has to be nurtured. It has to be taken care of. It is a living entity.
If mass consciousness is harmonized and happy, the result is harmonious balance of sun, wind, and rain. People have forgotten the old ways, the ways of harmonizing with nature, mostly because they have lost the harmony within themselves.
We're vibing off of each other as we do with all the elements of the world, the space, water, trees, living creatures. That's part of our being.
Did you know that trees talk? Well, they do. They talk to each other, and they'll talk to you if you listen. Trouble is, many people don't listen. They never learn to listen to the voices in nature. But I have learned a lot from trees. Sometimes about the weather, sometimes about animals, sometimes about the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit has provided you and me with an opportunity for study in nature's university. The forests, the rivers, the mountains, the animals, which include us.
We've got to open our eyes before we can do anything.
There's song, there's dance, there's prayer, there's homage. There's just being still. In essence, that you have that mindset. Rain, where are you? Rain, we need you. You're speaking to it as an human, as a force that understands you. Just like I reiterate, I'm going to say again, it feels your vibe. It can feel like you're talking to a plant. That plant will automatically take in that vibe. It's a breathing, living element. So is rain, snow, wind, whatever that force, whatever that realm is. You need to meditate along with it, or however it's brought upon you that day, that moment, for your location or other locations. Again, prayer, song, dance.
In every culture, there have been people known to be rainmakers. Who can make rain? Anyone.
Yes, I can.
The making of rain requires harmony within and a love of nature.
That we give it thanks, we honor it, we respect it, we hold it in esteem, just like any other moving force that there is, that we live with and we have our sisterhood with, brotherhood with.
The secret of rainmakers? Reverence. If we work together, spread awareness, and start treating the earth with respect, we can reverse the damage and start healing the earth. It is our home. It has given us so much. We owe it to the planet to treat her as a living entity and to love and respect all the living creatures that dwell on her. Each of us is part of the great dance of life on this beautiful planet.